Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today at our, oh, sorry, I'm gonna go ahead and share our slides. Sorry, maneuvering here. Okay. Again, welcome everyone to our virtual showcase here at the USC Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work. This showcase today is presented by the Office of Advancement and Alumni Relations. My name is Jennifer Chung-Vanzini, Director of Advancement, and thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate all of you taking your time out of your busy schedule to listen in on a very important showcase as we highlight the Edward R. Roybal Institute on Aging. Just to go over a little bit about today's showcase, it is a live recorded Zoom webinar. It will be recorded and we will follow up with all of our attendees with a link to the recording. It's also live on Facebook right now on our social work Facebook page. We will also send all of our attendees a copy of the presentation slides. So please just listen in today and then you can reference the PowerPoint afterwards, as we will send them to all of you for attending. And then please use the Q&A box feature to type in your questions throughout the presentation as different speakers present, and we will have some time at the end to go over your Q&A. I'm very honored and excited to introduce to you our speakers today at the Edward R. Roybal Institute of Aging. It is a wonderful research, practice, community facing institute here at the Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work, and it's headed by Dr. Maria Aranda. She is the Executive Director and the Associate Professor of Social Work. She is an educator, social worker. Maria Aranda is heads the USC Edward R. Roybal Institute on Aging. She holds joint faculty appointments at the Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work and the Leonard Davis School of Gerontology here at USC. An expert in health and aging, Dr. Aranda's research focuses on the impact of medical and psychiatric illnesses on adults and their families, the development and testing of interventions that meet their needs and preferences, and health disparities among underserved groups and communities. Dr. Aranda is also director of the Outreach, Recruitment, and Engagement Core of the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center at USC and co-investigator of the National Impact Collaboratory and the USC AD-RCMAR, which are both funded by the National Institute on Aging. Please join me in first introducing you to Dr. Maria Aranda. Dr. Aranda, you're muted, so you want to go ahead and unmute?
Thank you. Happens to me all the time. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much for the very nice introduction. On behalf of the USC Edward R. Roybal Institute on Aging, I welcome you to the research webinar titled Advancing Family Caregiving Research in Diverse Communities. Before we turn our attention to the first speaker, I'd like to share information about the USC Roybal Institute, which was named after the late Congressman Edward R. Roybal. He served 3 decades in the U.S. House of Representatives and championed the very first federal legislation that funded services for individuals and families affected by Alzheimer's. Our institute is a university institute located in the USC Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work at the University of Southern California. And our mission is to enhance the lives of older adults, adults with disabilities, and their family caregivers. And this is accomplished through a very thoughtful engagement process with individuals, families, and communities around seemingly intractable problems such as chronic health conditions, behavioral health disorders, and working towards developing aging-friendly services through evidence-based interventions and programs. We write grants, we conduct research, we train students and postdoctoral scholars, we publish scientific work, And we move the needle on research, policy, and practice with the goal of ensuring health equity, especially among underrepresented groups. Before we transition today to our first speaker, I'd like to make two important announcements. I currently lead a study that tests a caregiver interventions for caregivers in the community 18 years of age or older that are caring for a loved one with dementia or any type of dementia such as Alzheimer's disease, whether the diagnosis is made or not. And this study is a very important study in that it increases caregiver skills and knowledge about dementia. And we are conducting the study in collaboration with our community partners, Alzheimer's Los Angeles and St. Barnabas Senior Services. If you're interested in learning more about the study, there is a web link that will be posted in the chat box, or if you're interested in participating in the study or just knowing more about it, please contact the Institute. The second announcement is quite serendipitous. Just today, there will be a public release of a special report commissioned by the National Institute on Aging and published by the National Academy of Science. And the title of the report, which is available online, will be available online at no cost, is Meeting the Challenge of Caring for Persons Living with Dementia and Their Care Partners and Caregivers. And this is the first state-of-the-art report on the evidence that supports which type of interventions and programs are readily available now for broad dissemination and implementation. And it also gives a blueprint for future research in this area. So let's turn to our research showcase today. We have three distinguished senior scientists that are associated with our institute and have dedicated their careers to the study of aging. Today's research presentations cover several intriguing areas of study. Dr. Iris Chi will present her work related to intervention development for family caregivers among Chinese immigrants. Dr. Yuri Jang will provide insights on assessing community readiness for dementia research in Asian American communities. And Dr. Shinyi Wu will round out our presentation today with her work related to understanding how Latino families access information on dementia. Dr. Iris Chi, she will be our first presenter. Dr. Iris Chi is the Chinese American Golden Age Association Francis Wu Chair for the Chinese Elderly at the USC Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work. She's an expert in health and gerontology and has participated in more than 120 studies and published over 375 articles and book chapters. She has been elected as Fellow of the Gerontological Society of America, the American Academy of Social Welfare and Social Work, InterRI, the Phi Tau Phi Scholastic Honor Society of America, and the International Association of Gerontology and Geriatrics. She's an honorary professor, consultant, and senior advisor to more than 30 local and overseas universities and research institutes. She's also the associate editor and editorial board member for the many gerontology and social work journals in our fields. And lastly, she was awarded the Judy Chu Congressional Woman of the Year Award. With that, I pass the Zoom mic to Dr. Chi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aranda, for your kind introductions. I'm very honored to have these opportunities to present my work in this showcase webinar. Let me share my slide with you. Okay, are you able to see it? All right, I assume there is no problem, okay. All right, the title of my presentation today is Developing a Body, Mind, Spirit Caregiver Self-Care Program and Mobile Applications for Chinese American in the United States. This is a chart to outline what I'm going to talk about today in 10 minutes. It seems a lot, but most of my presentation will focus on the research, which I highlight in the yellow colors. Okay, but before I start talking about my research, may I ask your permission to let me reminiscing a little bit about why I get interested in caregiving studies. About 30 years ago, I wasn't doing any caregiving study at that time. However, I provide a lot of advices to my colleagues, friends who were facing the challenge of caring for their loved ones. Just because I'm a gerontology social worker, they think I know everything. I have been doing that for a few years, and I myself became a caregiver for my parents. I have been doing that for 15 years. So I start to realize the role of caregivers and the tasks they're doing. It's easy to talk about it, but it's actually very difficult to do it. So my academic caregiving research is derived from my research on the long-term care services and policy research. And one of the challenge for all aging society is to have enough qualified personal care workforce, including family members. And also very few training programs are targeting these populations. Therefore, 20 years ago, I'm very lucky I received a large training grant to develop a caregiver train the trainers program. And I gathered a large team of multidisciplinary team. People are all professionally trained, mostly from the Western societies. And this team worked together to develop a comprehensive training curriculum. And we train over 600 trainers. And these trainers, last count I have is they already trained over 120,000 caregivers in Asia. And most of them are able to get a job in the long-term care settings. However, from the feedback of our trainees, I realized two things. One is the importance of using a culturally relevant and holistic health approach in caregiving training. Second, both formal and informal caregivers are facing challenges in their daily activities, and they have similar unmet needs in caregiving knowledge and support. So based on this feedback, I developed a Eastern Body, Mind, Spirit holistic health caregiver self-care curriculums. So what is the rationale to study Asian American caregivers? Two reasons here. Caregiving and self-care are challenges for Asian Americans in the United States due to the cultural barriers, limited accessible support and resources, and few interventions exist now to assist Asian American caregivers in better performing their caregiving and self-care. So in order to fill the gap, I developed this menu adapted to the United States situations, and I would like to see how this can be applied to the Chinese immigrant caregivers. So we have both hard copy menus on the left-hand side. I show the menus. It's bilingual, so we have in English and in Chinese. Right now, we also translate the menu into Korean as well. And we also put our materials, all the training materials online on the Roybal website. So if you are interested, you're welcome to go to the website and visit the program. So after we have this training material, so the first thing I do is I would like to find out whether this program works or not. So I have decided to do a pilot study to evaluate the program. So I'm working with the community-based organizations, and we recruit caregivers age 18 and above to participate in a quasi-experimental design study. It's a mixed method, which means both qualitative and quantitative data collections. So we have both outcome and formative evaluations. The program itself is a in-person training. It's 3-hour sessions per week for a total of 4 weeks. The program was well received among the Chinese caregiver participants and showed positive outcomes in terms of reducing depressions and caregiver burdens and increased caregiver self-efficacies. However, we have identified 2 problems, 2 issues. One is recruitment, and second is scheduling. Recruitment is because a lot of the caregivers, they are very busy, and they are not aware that why they need to. They are very busy every day. They think they're doing their job, well, and they don't understand why they need training, and they also don't understand why they need to pay attention to take care of themselves. Okay, scheduling. Even we can recruit enough people to participate in the program, but because of the in-person training, we have to gather everyone to come to the site on the same day, the same time, for even just for 4 times. We find that it's very difficult because everyone's schedule is so different. So therefore, I know that I need to find other approach to disseminate my training materials. So the first thing I have done is I try to see if I can just try the self-direct learning approach. So again, working with the community-based organizations, and we recruit Asian Americans caregivers age 18 and above to participate in a 1-group pre and post test study. And why self-direct learning? Because this way, first of all, caregivers are all different. A person taking care of a stroke elderly versus a person taking care of a Alzheimer disease family members, their knowledge base can be quite different. So therefore, I thought, my menu actually covered 26 topics. So it's probably a good idea to let them to select what they would like to learn. And secondly, self-direct learning allow people to learn on their own pace. Like I said, everybody's schedule is different, so this will solve that problems. So the results, the program enhanced participants' capacities in 4 domains. They have more confidence in caregiving. They think that they have better abilities to deal with emergencies, and they know how to resolve the concerns. And they also think they have much better communications with their care recipients. And they also improve in 3 knowledge domains: understanding Alzheimer's disease, transferring care recipients, and caregiver support resources. So therefore, I believe self-direct learning program is visible for Asian caregivers to broaden their caregiving knowledge and capacities. About 3 years ago, I invite my colleague, Dr. Shinyi Wu. She's one of the speakers today. I want her to help me to explore, whether we can use technology to allow the Asian caregivers to access to my materials, training materials. So Dr. Wu remind me, the first thing is, we need to understand what kind of applications, functions the caregivers would like to have. Therefore, we have start a user-centered co-design studies. So we use this design thinking framework to co-design a mobile app for delivering self-care interventions with the first generation Chinese immigrant caregivers. We conduct individual in-depth interviews at all three co-design phases. Let me show you this. This is the slide to show that the three phases, the conceptual phases, interactive prototype phases, as well as the internal beta test phases. So the aim is to evaluate the content and the function of the prototype apps. We publish one paper and another paper is right now under review. So I summarize these findings of these two papers. First one is the participants report and met self-care needs specific to their cultural background, immigrant status, and caregiving tasks. This is, as we all know, they have a lot of unmet needs, but this is more related to, if they're going to use technologies. So we also ask them about their technology needs. The second paper is the findings of prototype design interviews indicates some feasibilities for delivering the interventions using the co-design apps. Designing the apps to be engaging and fun appear as highly desirable. So people don't want to just, like reading books. They would like to have games or some, like the exercise. If it can be a fun exercise, would be great. So we confirm, this co-design approach offer participants opportunities to articulate what types of supportive resources and app features they wish to have. And as a matter of fact, last week, Dr. Wu and I has submitted a grant applications, and we would like to further explore this approach. And the new app's name will be Care for Me Too. So I already show you this one. Oops, sorry. Oh, this is just the mobile screenshot, some of the sample for the apps. The first one is the homepage, and the second one is the topics they can choose to read. We have a list of the topics, and for the first class, this is the first class topics. And then the last one is in case they want to make appointment to talk to our coach. This is a screen that they can use to make the appointments. Okay, the last study I would like to talk about is 2 years ago, some MSW student approached me, and they know that I'm doing caregiving study on Asian Americans, and they say well, most of the readings are talking about people who are in their 40s or older. So what about the next generation? How about the millennials? And also they're concerned about people who were born here, not immigrants. Okay. So I said, okay, let's do a study to find out. So we recruit 27, we call ABC, American-born Chinese caregivers, aged between 20 to 35, to participate in a qualitative in-depth phone interview studies. The purpose is to describe the perceptions and experience of caregiving from the viewpoint of the of this target populations, and explore how the traditional values influence their perceptions and behaviors. Again, you know, we have draft a paper right now. It's under review. Another is in preparations. The finding is coming from these two papers. The first one, participants report that their views of caregiving was influenced by 3 different filial piety themes. I'm not going to read them all. If you're interested, you're welcome to read the papers. And the other paper is based on one of our end of life case study, because you know these are all very young. Many of them do not have caregiving experience yet. So we have prepared some case scenario. We have 4 case scenarios. So one of the case scenario is about end of life case. So the participants' caregiving decision and behavior were affected by both American and traditional cultures. So this is the finding of the studies. This is my last slide, and I list all the publications. So you're welcome to refer to them for more details. If you couldn't find the papers, you can contact me, and I will see how I can send you the paper myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chi. We give you a virtual applause for a beautiful presentation. We appreciate your work and that of your colleagues and how it reinforces the importance of co-designing programs with people who are actually not only interested in this topic, but will be consumers of the interventions that you put forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Yuri Jang, who will share her insights from several research studies that address the lack of knowledge among Asian Americans with regards to advanced care planning, dementia knowledge, etc. Dr. Yuri Jang is a professor at the USC Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work and a senior scientist at the USC Edward R. Roybal Institute on Aging. Trained as a gerontologist, she received her doctoral degree in aging studies at the University of South Florida and completed her postdoctoral training at the University of South Florida Institute on Aging and at the University of Georgia Gerontology Center. Her areas of interest include positive adaptation in aging, health disparities, and minority health and service utilization. She's received numerous honors and awards, including minority fellowships from the Gerontological Society of America and the American Psychological Association, the Emerging Professional Award from the APA Division 45, Career Achievement Award from the Korean American Social Work Educator Association, also recognizing Asians Instilling Strength and Excellence Award, and the GSA Minority Mentor Award. She is also an elected secretary of the Gerontological Society of America. Dr. Jang?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Maria, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for being here today. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, my presentation is about the ADRD in Asian American communities. I'm going to present a brief synopsis of the several studies to share my research trajectories in this field. And before I do that, let me start with some background. About 6 million Americans are being affected by ADRD, and the social cost of ADRD is fairly high. It's also important to note that many the ADRD patients are being cared by informal caregivers, their family members and friends. So the impact of ADRD is pervasive both at individual and societal levels. According to the MedLife Foundation survey, ADRD is the second most feared disease after cancer, but many people are not knowledgeable about this disease. this low literacy is particularly pronounced among racial and ethnic minorities. And speaking about disparities, these individuals with minority backgrounds are more likely to have delayed diagnosis and underutilization of services compared to non-Hispanic whites. However, not much is known about Asian Americans, which is the fastest growing segment of the US population. So my first study is about the Asian American Quality of Life Survey, which was conducted in Austin, Texas in 2015 before I joined USC. This was the special initiative of the city of Austin, and you see on the screen the official logo of the project. Asian Americans are diversified group, but one thing in common might be love for rice. So you see a rice plant and the diversity represented by different colors of the grain. And the circular pattern represents harmony, unification, and prosperities. So we employed culturally and linguistically sensitive approaches by using Asian language versions of the survey questionnaires, bilingual, bicultural survey assistants, and community partnerships. And our survey included more than 600 participants from diverse groups. And the small part of this survey was about ADRD. So we found that 18% had some concerns about AD, 11% had some plans, but these rates were consistently lower than the MetLife National Foundation survey. And we also had information about stigmatizing beliefs about ADRD. Half of the sample believed AD is a normal process of aging, 14% think developing AD is a matter of fate, and 6% associated AD with social avoidance or family embarrassment. So using this information, we published 2 papers, one about the AD concerns and plans, and the other one that our social work doctoral student, Jiaming Liang, is the first author, is about the predictors of stigmatizing beliefs about AD. So we found that people with low education and acculturation were more subject to stigmatizing beliefs, and these beliefs made people more concerned about AD, but this concern did not necessarily lead to making plans. So our studies highlighted the importance of educational programs for ADRD awareness and stigma reduction, and the need to tailor such programs for people with low education and acculturation. And there should be efforts to leverage AD concerns to AD plans. So the concerns making actual plans for the actions. The second study, we focused on older Korean Americans and examined the role of social capital. Many studies, including my own, it kind of showed the positive impact of education and acculturation, which is individual and personal levels of resources. And we focus on the interpersonal and the community levels of resources, known as social capital, such as having a family member or friends, having AD, social network, social activity participation, and community social cohesion. The study of older Korean Americans, the SOCA survey, was conducted with more than 2,100 older Korean Americans in 5 states, California, New York, Texas, Hawaii, and Florida, representing a wide array of Korean population density. Again, a small part of the SOCA survey was on ADRD, and we used that information for this paper. We have 2 outcomes, AD knowledge and the service awareness. And our findings not only confirm the positive impact of education and acculturation, which are noted in green, but also highlighted the benefit of social capital. So our findings suggest that the interventions to promote AD literacy and service awareness should consider socio-cultural context. And also, it calls attention to people who are socially isolated and disconnected from the community. The next study is the qualitative study on ADRD caregiving. So we conducted in-depth interviews with multiple stakeholders, including service providers in ADRD service agencies, service providers in Korean-specific social service agencies, and family caregivers. So we conducted a 90-minute in-depth interview with each participant, and I will briefly introduce major themes. First, the providers in ADRD service agencies expressed their challenges in reaching out to ethnic minority communities. On the other hand, Korean service agencies, they have full access to Korean communities, but they noted their discomfort with the lack of specialty training in dementia care. And major themes from caregivers were social isolation, informational needs, and obviously emotional needs. One caregiver said, it would be great to get to know other caregivers in Korean communities. Sometimes I just want to talk with somebody who understands what I'm going through. Another one said, having this interview is actually a treat for me. This is a wonderful getaway from my everyday caregiving routine. This last quote is from a female caregiver who provides 24/7 care to her mother-in-law who needs meals or snacks every 3 hours. So having these all together, there is a strong need to build interagency partnerships and caregiver support services. And such programs should be taken into account the cultural and linguistic accommodations. So right now I'm about to launch a new study entitled Adapting an Evidence-Based Intervention for ADRD Caregivers with Limited English Proficiency. So using the SAVVY Caregiver Program, which is widely known and highly regarded caregiver intervention, we are planning to conduct a cultural and linguistic adaptation and test its feasibility and acceptability for a larger trial with diverse populations. Dr. Ken Hepburn at Emory University, who is the original inventor of the SAVVY program, serves as a co-investigator on this project, and he will balance the fit and fidelity. And also the community partners are the Alzheimer's Los Angeles and the Koreatown Senior and Community Center. So we submit the application to National Institute on Aging, and we are informed that we are on the final the funding list, and we are waiting for the official letter at this moment. So hopefully I can share the findings from this study in a near future in another venue. And I'd like to acknowledge my major funding sources. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jang. This is very interesting work provided by you and your colleagues, and the nice way that you've weaved the large-scale data collection and qualitative work. Again, thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Shinyi Wu. She is an associate professor with dual appointments at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering and Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work. Dr. Wu brings an engineering approach to research that spans many social work applications from health, behavioral health, mental health, aging, organization, management, to policy analysis and transformation. Her research addresses goals important for American social policy and program analysis in order to design effective health systems that deliver better patient-centered outcomes at lower costs, and to advance scientific knowledge leading to solutions for human problems as we've seen today. With that, Dr. Wu, I pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Dr. Aranda, for your introduction. Let me share my slides. So in this brief presentation, I will talk about my study of Latino caregivers with the focus on their information access related to Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. So why does this research focus on Latino caregivers? A few years ago, I had opportunity to model the projection of Latino Alzheimer's patients' prevalence of this. And based on the information that Latinos is 1.5 times more likely to develop dementia compared to non-Latino whites, and projected population growth and aging, I found that ADRD prevalence is projected to increase steadily, reaching 3.5 million people by 2060 from about 500,000 people when I studied this analysis. This almost 8 times projection inspired me to focus on this population. Therefore, I'll conduct a study to understand how can we best help this increasing large population of Latino caregivers. One aspect I would like to see is what is the information need to help these increasingly millions of Latino caregivers. These family caregivers, they need information to help them better prepare about the disease and the caregiving tasks, and dealing with many challenges in providing caregiving. So I want to know what is out there, what's the current state information. Therefore, we learned from the current caregivers of Latinos with Alzheimer's diseases to see what are they seeking for, and what's the current availability of information, what information will be needed in the future to help them better provide care. So using the Longo's integrated model of health information, I developed this 3-steps process for information access in order to improve outcomes. The first step is seeking information. This means person is aware of the information needs and expecting the information is available. Therefore, they will go seek information. They also need the skills and time to seek information. The second step, as a result of seeking information, hopefully they will obtain the information. That requires information to be available, and the information is presented in a way that meets their content needs as well as their language and cultural preferences, so they can absorb the information, which then leads to the third step, using the information. In this step, the information should be actionable to help guide the information users to participate in decisions or improve their process of caregiving in order to improve outcomes. So I'm going to present the results using this model. So you'll see this model, three steps again when I present the results. The research methods, as I mentioned, we want to know what's the current state information that the current caregivers are using. So we recruited 21 21 Latino caregivers, 5 healthcare providers, including a physician, nurses, and social workers, and the social service provider. She's leading a caregiver support group in the communities. So we conduct semi-structured qualitative interviews with these people. I want to talk about this recruitment because although we didn't recruit many people, it took us almost a whole year to recruit these 27 people. 15 of them we were able to recruit from one major USC facility to take care of Alzheimer's disease patients. This is from the Rancho Los Amigos. We also got 4 people from the caregiver support group. We also tried to use the social media account Alzheimer's Los Angeles and the Alzheimer's Association of Trial Match website. Unfortunately, it wasn't a very productive yield. We only had 1 participant from this method and another one referred by the participants. So with the interview data, we transcribed it and analyzed to understand the themes of information access using our information access process model. Let me briefly describe the characteristics of our participants. The average age of our participants, 54 years old, 17 of them are female and 8 of them are employed. Our participants more than half of them prefer to speak Spanish. They have 16 of the 21 have children under the age of 18 living with them. These people spend more than 35 hours work of time spending in caregiving for their loved ones. Majority of them are the adult child of the patient, and they live with the participants. The major source of information we found people were looking for is from the internet, followed by the Alzheimer's disease organization and their healthcare providers. They also look for information, but very few of them from the books, brochures, pamphlets, or their friends and coworkers. They are looking for 5 major categories of information, including better understand about the disease dementia, looking for short and long-term care options or medical care. They're also looking for community resources and how to improve their caregiving skills. let me start with the results about caregiving skills. This is the sort of information that's most well available when they are seeking for it. They are seeking to better understand how to assist with a person, personal care, and performing first aid. They also want to know how to respond to challenging behaviors of their loved ones and how to facilitate leisure activities for persons with dementia. They basically report that, yes, we can find this kind of information, and this kind of information is able to help them to able to respond to behavioral or psychological symptoms of their loved ones. Also then tips how to be more patient and be compassionate when they have some events happening that they need to deal with. So the caregiving skills is the most rich information available that they are able to access to. They are also looking for better understanding about the disease itself, including the general information about the disease and why their family members develop dementia. They also want to know how caregiving changes as the disease progresses, as they are experiencing this. They want to see what's going to come up next. They found they are able to find some information, but they didn't feel that was sufficient enough to answer the question they have, especially regarding why their family members develop dementia. How do we better treat this dementia, treat this disease? They found there was insufficient information, and that also speaks to the state of the science. When they find out about this information, they found this helped them to expect what changes going to come up with and how to better prepare for the changes. So they found this information was helpful for them, and there was no barriers of using such information. Another category of information is about the services, including medical services and short and long-term care options they could use. So they are seeking for information related to medical care, such as healthcare services for people with dementia. Especially many of them are looking for, how do I better understand what's happening to my loved ones? Where do I get to have a diagnosis? And to getting a diagnosis seems to be quite challenging for many people. When they are observing the behavioral changes of their loved ones, they also want to know, is this medication useful if they'll prescribe medications? And because when patients taking medication, they also observe some behavioral changes. So they really want to understand how this medication works and what are side effects, so they can better be informed. They are also looking for short and long-term care options, such as respite care at home or in the care settings, and some long-term options such as nursing homes. Are able to obtain the information? To some extent, they're able to get medical care information, but they are primarily looking for information on the internet because there aren't enough resources or a source of information. So they're primarily looking on the internet, but many of them report that they didn't have the skills sufficiently to navigate the internet to obtain the information they want. They have less barriers to seek short-term and long-term care information, so they could obtain that. Are they using the information? Yes, when they get this information, they were able to participate more effectively in the treatment decisions or enroll their loved ones with dementia and care or memory center or adult and daycare respite programs. However, there are barriers that they are not able to use information they found because of some disruptive factors, such as due to the lack of insurance of their loved ones, or because their undocumented status, or some service couldn't be used because the patient have Alzheimer's disease. So these are some disruptive factors they found become barriers for them to use such services. As for the community resources, this is the primary source of services they are looking for. And they are looking for caregiver support groups, seminars, and trainings to better understand the programs. That's why many of my colleagues are adopting or developing intervention to address these needs. They are also looking for services for housekeeping and personal care, community events related to dementia, and social events for their person with dementia to join. They are able to some extent, but not sufficiently able to get information to participate in this program, which again speaks to the needs of my colleagues' research to develop these interventions to make it more available to help the caregivers. Another thing is that they are looking for this information on the internet, but this information spread in different places, and they found they didn't have the time or necessarily the skills to identify those information. When the information is available, they do use this information to help them to get some respite or to help their participants to help their family members to join some of the services. But again, some of them are not able to use the information because those services have certain language, such as caregiver programs, not available in Spanish. So from this research, I identified 3 future directions to improve outcomes. One is that we identify informal caregivers did not really looking for care coordination and information related to care coordination. We know caregivers must work collaboratively with formal caregivers, such as healthcare providers and community service providers, to meet the variety of needs of caregiver recipient. This is a teamwork, how to communicate and share information. In other words, care coordination will be important, but this is not in, the caregivers currently is not aware of such needs and not seeking such information. For the information they are seeking, they primarily looking for community resources, but we need to have better information and better access to those information. That's again, so training programs, the report from National Academy of Medicine, all this information are addressing to such needs. But we also want to emphasize that there's information needs should be meeting the language and cultural preferences of this growing number of caregivers. And most of this information did not address issues such as insurance, immigration status for people with limited English proficiency. So I encourage more efforts to address such needs. Lastly, our participants report that they have limited skills to access information. So perhaps some skill training for them to become better user of available information, as well as developing better informational tools to help these caregivers, such as the project Dr. Chi and I are doing, to use apps to put information in one easy access place with variety of information to address their multitudes of needs. So these are the future direction I hope will inspire you to address their needs. I would like to acknowledge our school, Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work, for funding this research, and my co-investigators, Dr. Magali Ramirez at University of Washington and Dr. Hao Miaojun at USC Center for Economic and Social Research. If you'd like to get more information or share your experiences, please feel free to contact me by email at shinyiwu@usc.edu. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wu, for your work and those of your colleagues that captures the lived experience of Latino stakeholders, especially in terms of information access. This marks the entry into the question and answer period. I know there are a few questions that have been posted. One of the questions addresses the issue of the pandemic, right? So many things have changed. And the question is, in light of COVID and moving online, like many programs have already, how can we reach out and provide information to caregivers? And I'd like to open that to anyone on our panel.
I think that speaks to the need of information access, as I was speaking to, when the pandemic is making a big leap in adopting technology. This speaks to more needs to address our caregivers. Are they able to use the information on the internet? Are we providing information which is easily accessible to the community? So as an engineer, I have to say that I believe information access is a key aspect in addressing such needs, especially this highlights in the pandemic.
Thank you. Others?
I think the COVID is really shifting our gear, like the paradigms in terms of the communication. So I guess the gap is that the ready access for the internet versus no access for the internet before the COVID. That gap is really widening. So the more of the concern, I guess many caregivers still have the access to the internet, and some of the caregivers with the limited English proficiency rely upon their ethnic community networks. So there are some support. But my concern is the isolated older adults who didn't have access to the internet before the COVID. So that is really speaking about the heightened risk for the social isolation for the older adults themselves.
If I can add, since 2 years ago, we developed this app study group. Some of the participants are still staying in our social media chat groups. So during this academic time, sometimes they share information. So I think it's I agree with Dr. Wu, technology probably can help when the society has to be quarantined or people cannot meet in person. At least, social media can contribute a little bit on information sharing.
And we do know that this situation is augmented in older groups. I think for the millennials, the issue of technology is less of an issue, is not as accentuated, but I think for the older groups that typically have not had access to technology, this is really a problem. And what it does in research is it tends then to drift into recruiting and sampling people with higher education, perhaps, people with higher levels of income, perhaps, and English speakers. So I think that's an important issue that we have to take into consideration with how we try not to increase the technological or digital divide. In our work that we've done in the caregiver intervention that we're doing with Alzheimer's Los Angeles and St. Barnabas Senior Services, we've moved from a community-based program to an actual online program, and it's now in its entirety, both in surveys and in also the interviews and the classes themselves. So that presents a challenge, and as I said before, that does accentuate the disparity in terms of the digital divide.
Yep.
So I don't see any other questions. Am I missing any?
I see one person has commented, older population may not have technological access, but we also see that older population is the fastest growing segment of population adopting technology, especially when the mobile technology adoption has increased to about 94% of the population. This was a few years data, like maybe 2018, 2019. So perhaps when technology becomes more easily accessible, when the broadband becomes more widely covered, hopefully this technological divide will reduce. And I think our community's effort to provide better information content and easily accessible format of information would really help people to close the divide. So it's not just the access to the technology, but also when technology is available, are we ready?
And also when we develop our app, the first one is just using the Apple smartphone. So in the design, you know, all the function, all the keys, all the icons, we try to make it similar to the Apple phone. So people who are using that phone, they don't feel like they're learning a new applications. Almost like everything to move around, they know how to do it themselves. So I think this is very important. You know, I would highly recommend, you know, people are thinking about technology intervention, using technologies, work with an engineer. But of course, not all engineers are interested in human services. So if you can find one, then it's very helpful. I learned a lot from Dr. Wu. It's
Likewise.
Well, thank you so much. It appears that we're at the tail end of our presentation. I'd like to again thank everyone to give a virtual applause to all of our panelists. Thank you so much for the interesting information that you have shared with us, and which is really innovative and pioneering work in this area. Again, thank you. I'd like to thank our audience for the time that you have spent with us today. We look forward to engaging with you in the future and to seeing you again in our next events sponsored by the USC Roybal Institute on Aging. The information, the taping will be available to you, and of course the PowerPoints as well. Thank you. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you again, everyone. We appreciate you all joining us today. And just to remind everyone once again that we will be sharing our presentation with all of you, as well as a copy of the PowerPoints that were shared today by our researchers and faculty members. And again, I want to also highlight the caregiver study that the Roybal Center is seeking volunteers for. So please go ahead and visit the website there. You can contact any one of our speakers today. And please, we will also send a copy of this study that just came out today, as Dr. Aranda mentioned, meeting the challenge of caring for persons living with dementia and their care partners and caregivers. Again, we appreciate so much for the incredible research that our professors here have been doing. And as many of you have mentioned, this is a crucial and much needed area where accessibility, access is the key. And if we can have the right tools to give to our communities, especially communities of color, and communities speaking other languages other than English. This is a huge gap that our professors and researchers are working so hard to fill. And we ask that if you would like to learn more, please go ahead and reach out to Dr. Aranda, Dr. Chi, Dr. Jang, Dr. Shinyi Wu, because they are, as you can tell, full of knowledge as well as passion, and they care deeply for our older community. And so please go ahead and reach out to them. Reach out to us if you'd like to support the Roybal Institute. None of this can happen without funding, and if this is something that falls within your giving passions and you would like to support this kind of research, as well as the development of the right tools, as the professors mentioned, apps and technology, if we can get those tools out to the community, have that in the hands of those who are caring for our older adults, that is key. And so please reach out to any one of us. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. Please continue to stay safe and fight on. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Jennifer, thank you, Dr. Aranda, and my colleagues. Bye-bye.
Thank you.